Gregor, Slovenians. Primoz Roglic, Tadej Pogacar, second place, first place at last year's Tour de France. Where have they been? They're not going to these big races, the Tour de Suisse, the Criterium du Dauphine. They are really doing their own very different, non-traditional preparations for the Tour.
We haven't seen Roglic race at all. I've been looking at the Instagram of Wout van Aert, who's also coming back from having his appendix removed, I think, and he looks to be back in form and ready. But they're all up there in Tigna at the training camp, along with Sepp Kuss, the American. Primoz is up there. I saw him racing in his Slovenian National Championship Patagonia-style jersey with that yellow, red, and blue. And so they're all up there in that training camp. They're all training like mad up there. He took the decision to skip the Criterium du Dauphine. Last year, of course, we all saw him just fall apart on stage 20 of the Tour de France. The team wanted to take a different run up. Well, what that means for us and the fans is that we haven't seen two of the big favorites for the Tour de France racing this month in those big World Tour races. Now, we did see, for those keen fans out there, surfing around the internet, the Tour of Slovenia coverage, we saw Tadej Pogacar win the overall there at the 5-day stage race. He went away on a 22-kilometer raid on stage 2, took the lead. But really, Michael, if you look at the rivals in that race, the second overall was Diego Luisi, his own teammate. So I'm not sure if it says too much about Pogacar. Of course, had he not won the overall there, it would have been something to talk about. So these guys haven't been tested against their other top rivals and who knows for how long. But, we have this Pogacar who won the UAE Tour, won Triano, won Liège, and he's the defending champion, and he's only 22 years old. So there's going to be a lot of pressure heading into the Tour de France on June 26th for Tadej, Michael.
It's really interesting seeing just these two guys take their own strategy because, we've seen year after year, the entire Ineos team, they use the Criterium du Dauphine as a springboard for the Tour de France. And the riders that they send to the Tour de France to win the yellow jersey, that is really all they do in their entire season is they go to the Criterium du Dauphine, sharpen their knives, and then they go to the Tour and they win the yellow jersey. And that's kind of like job done for the year. They go into hibernation and then they come back up and do it the next year. These two Slovenians, those guys race their bike year round. And if you put them in a bike race, they just can't really seem to help themselves but to win and do it in pretty astounding fashion. So, Tadej Pogacar winning Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Primoz Roglic just being, insanely good in all the 1 week long races earlier this season. I think that, if you take it in that context, the way that they're preparing for the Tour probably makes a little bit of sense because those guys were riding way, way better than Geraint Thomas was 5 months ago. On completely different planets, essentially. So it would make sense that Geraint Thomas, his preparation is really he needs incrementally more and more difficult racing leading up to the Tour to prepare. Whereas Primoz Roglic, Tadej Pogacar, they just really needed to rest and rebuild after the classics ended, after those week-long races ended a couple months ago. So they've been resting, they've been recovering, and we're just going to have to see how these two Tour de France prep strategies pan out for both the Slovenians and then the rest of the field.
What can I say? I think if we put an asterisk on Carapaz's and Port's wins at those respective races, because had the Slovenians been there, it would have been a different sort of battle, and I think we all kind of missed their presence in shaping those race overalls. The other thing is that both of those guys, with Pogacar in UAE Emirates and Roglic in Jumbo-Visma, they don't have to prove their leadership roles in the team heading into the Tour de France, where you look at Ineos and the kind of struggle for team leadership, the same way when we're talking about Michael Woods and Chris Froome, about them proving themselves heading into the Tour. It's not the situation with Pogacar and Roglic. We are, I hope, fingers crossed, and I'm looking around for official start list. What I hear is that they're both slated for lining up in the Slovenian championships this weekend. So we'll get to see that battle unfold just a week ahead of the Tour de France.